G'day, it's Joel Rasmussen for Southern Cross Combat, and ahead is fight at Cage Warriors 176. I'm talking to Mr. Charles Joyner. Charles, thank you very much for the time. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Just weight cutting, so we're on that final stretch now. But yeah, good, good.
It is a bit of the slodge, isn't it? This is the rough part of fight week, so I do appreciate you giving me the time. How is the weight cut?
Yeah, it's going well. Last year I was cutting to middleweight, so it feels a lot easier than that. So light heavyweights a bit more enjoyable, but yeah, it's I mean it's going about as well as a weight cut can go. You don't feel amazing, but I don't feel too bad either.
Talking about the move to light heavyweight, um, when you do that, does everything go up? Like, are you heavier now walking around now that you're a light heavyweight than you were when you were walking around as a middleweight?
Yeah, yeah. So that was the interesting thing. It was sort of at the end of last year. Well, I came back to Australia and for we ended up being 2 months, and I sort of just was relaxed on the diet a little bit. And I think because I'd been so focused on dieting for last year, my body just filled out, and I was sort of 103 kilos, whereas before I'd been walking around at 96, 97. And then I sort of made the decision, like middleweight was hard enough as it was, and I sort of made the decision that I'm gonna do light heavyweight this year. And as soon as I made that decision, I sort of just went up to about 106. It was so yeah. So I mean, I've gone from walking around at sort of like 97, 98 at the top end to now walking around maybe 106. So yeah,
The body knew.
yeah, yeah. The body just said, "Give me what it needs."
Your body's like, we're a light heavyweight now.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
I
It's trying
said
to
what
push me
we
to heavyweight almost, I think, but
maybe in
got
a
to
few
keep it.
fights.
Yeah, yeah. Few years maybe.
Now, as you mentioned there, came back to Australia. You're fighting and living over in England. Very happy to give you the hometown Aussie love. Um, but where originally are you from in Australia?
From Sydney, from Sydney.
So originally from New South Wales, and you shared a
Yeah.
post recently about the move. But if you can
Mhm.
recap for the people, why did you move over to England?
Yeah, so I was originally born here, so I've got a British passport, and my family's from England, and we moved over to Australia when I was younger, when I was a kid. But the reason I moved over in 2021 was just because of the COVID lockdown, really. So we obviously the lockdown in 2021 hit pretty hard, and no one really knew what was going to happen. So people were saying, that gyms were going to be closed for, you know, ages. No one knew when they were going to open. People were saying the main thing was that people were saying that fights weren't going to happen for years. Like they just couldn't see us being able to have fight shows. And then obviously I was stressing a bit about that because that's what I've decided to make a career in, and it's what I love doing. So I'd seen that the UK were open, that gyms were open, that people were having fights. I had the passport. I had to get permission from the government to leave, but I was able to leave, and I just thought I'm going to go over there and just see what happens. Didn't really have a plan of how long I'd stay, and then yeah, just got over there and just got to work. Got over here, well, got over here and got to work.
Never left.
Never left, just for a
Ha-
holiday, Christmas.
So yeah, exactly. If anyone with visas is watching, it's just for a holiday. Um, as you said, like you didn't necessarily know how long it would be. At what point does it go from I'm over in England to like, well, now I live here? Like, what point do you make
Mhm.
that decision?
You know, the first few months when I was there, I found it difficult to get fights. I just couldn't really get anything going. So in 2021, I ended up getting no fights, and so I'd been there for I'd only been there 4 months, but I'd wanted to get fighting straight away, but I just couldn't get anything going. And then it got to like the Christmas period, and I went and stayed with family over the Christmas period, and then I was hanging out with a friend who's also from Australia but was in London at the time, and I said to him that I'm gonna give it a good crack next year and try and get something going, but if I don't, I'll probably end up going back to Australia. And but then I managed to get a fight in sort of February, um and then I won that. Then I got a big fight over here in March of 2022, which was against a guy that was 47-0. And I ended up finishing him in the fourth round. And then from there, I got offered a world title fight in Italy. So I could see that although Australia is great, there's just the opportunities here are just you're just in the middle of it. You know, you've got Europe right there, you've got the US there. I ended up fighting in the US in July as well of that year for a world title. And I could just see that there were just so many opportunities here, and just a high level of people to train with, a high level of people to fight against, and I felt like my development was just gonna skyrocket by being here. So it was when I started getting fights in 2022 that I just thought, oh, I'm just gonna stick it out here and just keep it going.
For the people at home who are hearing, what was that guy record? Did you say 47-0?
Yeah, 47-0. Yeah,
For those people who are watching, this was during your kickboxing career. Who,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry,
if anyone's
yeah,
thinking 47-0 MMA fighter,
yeah, yeah.
um, but
I should have
I
clarified it.
I wanted to bring it up. So you had the kickboxing career over here. You bring that over with you to England. You're
Mhm.
fighting over there. Um, was the plan go over, do kickboxing, then swap to MMA? Like, where does MMA enter your combat sports life?
Yeah, yeah. So I'd always had in the back of my mind I wanted to do MMA, and it was I've been in Bam Bam's corner when he fought Struve, and that was on Fight Island, and it was Khabib's retirement fight, and obviously, so I was around it all during the lockdowns, and I sort of realized then that I wanted to be in the UFC and I wanted to do MMA. So, but I think it was just taking that step from being what I thought was one of the best kickboxers in Australia to then starting fresh in something new. And I knew that that would be a challenge in itself because I'd be starting at the bottom of the ladder again. So it was probably my ego just going like, oh, making excuses to not start the training. And then when I got to the UK, I just felt like it was a bit of a fresh start and I could just start training because no one really knew me. So I felt like my ego didn't really matter. Then I thought, oh, I can just go into this gym. It doesn't matter if I get, because I was getting beat up by amateur MMA fighters who could grapple because um, that's the reality of it. A high level striker, but if you have no grappling, someone with a bit of grappling is just gonna be able to dominate you. So it was when I came to England and I started training at Four Corners in Liverpool because I didn't have any fights lined up. I couldn't get any fights. There were loads of good guys doing MMA in the gym, so I just jumped in on the MMA sessions and just um slowly started to develop those skills. But it wasn't really until I made the move to Sunderland, and that's where I'm at now at TFT MMA with under Andrew Fisher when I really started learning MMA properly and developing a skill set. And I only started focusing on MMA at the start of last year, so it's not been too long that I've been doing it now.
Talking about kind of checking that ego and it being a fresh start, when you walk into a gym prepared, going, I'm going to now do MMA now, do you tell people about the kickboxing background? Do you tell them about those accomplishments? Or is that something you're like, I'm not going to tell anyone?
Yeah, I think it is. You don't tell anyone, but then it's sort of what ends up happening is then you do a striking session, and then people go, oh, and then obviously nowadays with social media, so it was. I didn't really. I remember. So the gym system at Four Corners was in Liverpool was which Four Corners is now the gym that has Cowbon in it as well, but Cowbon weren't in there at the time. But there were dorms, so we were living in dorms there. So I was just living in the gym, and probably for the first week, I just trained, but I was going to the MMA sessions. So say the very first session on a Monday morning was wrestling, and I hadn't said anything that I'd done kickboxing or anything, but I just did the wrestling session, and I was absolutely had no idea what I was doing. So obviously people just thought I was a beginner basically. And the kickboxing session was in the evening, and that was probably more when I got talking to people, and then you follow people on Instagram, and then it was just from people looking at my Instagram going like, you've got a few belts on that. Oh, you're Australian, you got titles, and then your records 15. I think it was 13-0 at the time, or 14-0. And then obviously that's how it comes out. But probably if it wasn't for social media, I probably would have just kept it quiet and just because then it's like even less embarrassing how bad you are at grappling.
The truth comes out eventually.
That's it. That's it. You can't hide in this day and age. Everyone finds everything out.
You rocking up to beginners MMA sparring, just dropping everyone with body shots. Nah, dude. First day here.
My first love. Just a natural. Terrible at grappling.
um, so you start MMA at Four Corners, but as you mentioned, you moved to TFT, and that's where it kind of begins to get put together for you. What was it about TFT that was so appealing to you and made you want to go there?
So my main training partner at the moment, Justin Burlinson, he's a well-respected name over here. Been on the Contender Series, should really be in the UFC by now, but a couple of things haven't gone his way recently. But he'll be there. He'll be there soon. But he was training with me at Four Corners, and then he's from Sunderland, and he was moving back to Sunderland. And he said, "Oh well, why don't you like come and try out the gym?" And I thought, oh, Sunderland's a pretty small place. I can't imagine them having a good gym. But anyway, I thought, oh yeah, I like training with Justin, so I was like, oh well, I'll come and check it out. And pretty much just from the first session, it was a wrestling session, and straight away I could just tell that Andrew Fisher's coaching style just fit in perfectly with my approach to training, my approach to fighting, just the way that he breaks things down. And um there's no ego involved in his coaching. He's constantly, even I've been there for 2 years, and just how he coaches now compared to 2 years ago is just so much developed, because he's just constantly researching things and constantly testing things out. And I feel like it's one of those gyms that doesn't get the respect that it deserves because it's in a small place, but we're slowly starting to get, people achieving success. I feel like it's going to be, like the fighting nerds in Brazil. It's that sort of where suddenly like no one's heard of them, and suddenly they've got, a number of guys having these massive runs in the UFC. I feel like it's that sort of thing that we're building, because we've got like a few guys all around my age that are just, slowly getting into their peak. And then you've got someone like Fisher guiding you, who's just, everyone's got a different style, but he knows exactly what skills need to be developed for each person's style. It's not like a cookie cutter type training. So it was all those things. I could just feel that it was just the right place for me. And I feel like I've progressed pretty quickly in MMA because of that guidance.
Is there any is there almost any benefit to that? Almost that like it's a small gym, it is a smaller class, and maybe you do get
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit underestimated. Is there any little bit of like, we're gonna prove some people wrong?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it being a small gym, so you get more attention anyway, and you get, it's not like it's in London where you have people traveling through, or you have um, even like Manchester where loads of people are coming in. It's sort of a place where we have our guys that are living there, and it's quite a close knit circle of people. Um, but yeah, I think also that probably one of the main benefits is that Fisher's accent is so thick that people don't understand what he's saying. So it's like he's speaking another language to us, and people have no idea what he's coaching us on. That's probably one of the benefits. He was cornering Mick Parker, who's in the UFC, and they had the microphone on him in the corner, and in between rounds, I think it was Paul Felder was just like, I did not catch a word of that, and even Michael Bisping was like, I caught some of it, and he's only from 2 hours away, so it was. I think that's one of the advantages in itself.
I know you're originally from England, but how did you find it going over there and having to deal with it is a place where you go in a town over and people sound completely different.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I didn't struggle too much with Fisher for I think maybe because Justin's obviously from the same area, so I'd been around him for quite a bit, and then came to the gym. I'd been warmed up to it a bit, and then I could understand it. But because there's some people from the local area that come in and they don't know what Fish is saying. But I think because he gets excited and speaks quite quick as well. There's another good story which I find hilarious, that when so Mick got into the UFC through the Contender Series in 2022, and then he had so Fisher came over with him to be in his corner, but Paul Craig, who's from Scotland, which is obviously another hard accent to understand, was also in Vegas, and they'd been training partners. So Paul jumped in Mick's corner as well, and I think when they were talking out the back before the show, they were all three of them were talking together amongst themselves, and a UFC runner came over and he's like, "Hi guys, so does anyone speak English here?" And it's like, and they're like, "Mate, we are English. We're speaking English. This is English. This." They obviously thought they were speaking like Polish or something. I find that story just amazing. That just sums it up, really.
That is so funny.
It's just ridiculous. But it's like that. That is, especially up here, the accents are just, and everyone, there's their own slang that people use, and it's just I've started catching myself using it as well. Then I come back to Australia and I start using the slang, and it's just, yeah, it's interesting.
A friend of mine just got back from a month over in Ireland. He's Irish
Uh,
heritage, but he's born here.
mhm.
And he sent me a text message when he got back, and I was like, "What does any of this mean? Like, it's all slang." I'm like, "I don't understand. What did you just say to me? I don't know what it means." Um, Talking about being an Aussie and coming into that scenario, as well as I know we talked about you kind of hide the kickboxing background until
Yeah.
eventually it comes out. But when you walk into a gym, it's a troubled time because it's in the middle of COVID.
Mm,
You're a guy from the other side of the planet.
mm,
Did you ever feel like a bit of an outsider? As I said, I know you're originally from England, but was there
mm.
ever any feeling of like, were they like, who the hell is this guy?
Uh, do you know what? I think so. Obviously, when I was younger, I was born here, and then we moved around a bit because of Dad's work. And then eventually ended up in Australia. So I think I've been used to that situation where I've been coming in to, whether it be a school or a sporting club, and everyone's been there for a few years, and everyone's got their cliques, and everyone. So I'm that doesn't really phase me, that situation where. So I probably, I mean, maybe for someone else you'd feel like an outsider, but I think I'm just used to that. But I think, both gyms, to be fair, Four Corners and TFT, they couldn't be more welcoming when I was there. And I think, that everyone, there's a feeling out process when you step into a gym of, there's probably, the first thing is they look at, if you've got any skills. But the second thing they look at is how tough you are and how willing you are to put the work in. And I think, you know, normally the how tough you are and how willing you are to put the work in trumps the skills, because you'll get someone, if you've got someone that's very skilled but they're a bit soft, they're not really gonna get the respect. But then if you've got someone that's got no skills but they're tough, they get the respect. So I think as long as you can just get stuck in, and I always think of that when I get in a, I think just even from being younger, when I moved around a lot, and then obviously now when you step into new gyms, it's like, oh, just put the work in, and then they can't not like you.
Where do you fall on the toughness and skilled scales?
Oh, maxing out both.
That's a true Aussie anthem. Um, you're repping Australia over there.
Mm,
You get announced as from Oz. However, you have had all the pro MMA fights in that, in the region, the UK region. Um,
yeah.
we talked about how the gym embraces you. How does the crowd embrace you? Are you just like designated bad guy because you're not from their country?
No, I think everyone loves. I always say this. Everyone loves an Aussie. I think it's um the funny thing. So Cage Warriors was when I had my first fight on Cage Warriors, which was in May this year. It was on Cage Warriors Newcastle, and obviously Newcastle and Sunderland. Well, people wouldn't necessarily know this in Australia, but they have a massive rivalry, and it's a football rivalry because they're two cities over. And in most cities, there's two football teams, but Sunderland only has one football team, and Newcastle only have one football team. So it's a massive rivalry between those. So when I got announced, it was in Newcastle. Obviously, I got announced fighting out of Sunderland, which I thought might get some cheers because it's still the northeast, and I was fighting a guy from Italy, but that got no cheers. But when they said by way of Sydney, that got quite a few cheers, and I was like, okay, fair enough, fair enough. So, and even when I did the walkout, like I walked out, with the cork hat and the Men at Work song down come from a land down under, and that got a really good reception. So I think everyone just loves an Aussie, really. Like they're not gonna be against us. It's different if you're English and you're walking out in Australia. uh you get booze then, but for some reason the English just love Aussies still.
I remember that's a bit in Michael Bisping's book where he's like
Right.
he's married to a girl. I think she's from Adelaide, and
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
he was fighting in Australia, and he's like, you'd think
Mm,
me being English, we're close enough. I've married a girl
mm.
from Adelaide. Nah, still got booed.
Yeah, boo. I feel like Bisping was one of those guys that just got booed.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
and then everyone loves him now. Like when he was
yeah.
fighting, people hated him. But you got a bit of the Bisping look, to be fair. Actually, now I'm looking at you.
Oh, thank you. It's the lazy eye.
It's the fake eye.
Yeah, exactly. Can you tell it's going off? Um, no, he is one of those interesting characters of yeah,
Yeah,
like I think everyone disliked him, and then after his career wrapped up, they're like, he kind of kept it real.
yeah, yeah. He was just, and I think people realize, like, oh, that's actually who he is. And now to be honest, Bisping's my favorite commentator. Like, I think he should do, I think he's better than DC. I think he's better than Rogan. I think Bisping's like, because the thing with Bisping, so I reckon he has 99% of what he says that just is spot on. And then the 1% of the time that he gets it wrong, he'll just make fun of himself straight away. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just, I think he brings something else to the commentary. Whereas I feel like Dominic Cruz is the opposite. I feel like Dominic Cruz has like awful takes, and then he gets like really offended if someone sort of brings that up.
Who could forget? Connor is tiring out
Oh,
Habib by getting punched in the head.
I think Khan trying to tire him out here in this position.
I think he's getting smashed. The immediate response from Joe
Yeah,
Rogan.
yeah, yeah. That's where Joe Rogan's good like that because he just doesn't care as well. He'll just say, or the other one that with always makes me laugh where he goes, I feel like it was John Jones was fighting someone, and I think John Anik, or it might have been who was the other guy that used to be with Rogan all the time? It slips
Mike
out of my mind.
Goldberg.
Yeah, that's it. My Gold. I think it was. I feel like it was Goldberg, and he was saying he was like Jones in the white shorts, and then whoever he was fighting in the black shorts, and then Joe Rogan's like, or or black guy John Jones and white guy. Like, why wouldn't you just say that?
That was said by Joe Rogan.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he'd
he,
get
im-
cancelled for that now.
he immediately tries to distance himself from it.
Yeah, I got nothing to do with this guy.
I wanted to ask about the scene. We're talking about, like talk about a Mike Bisping, you think of like a Leon Edwards and stuff. What
Mm,
is the MMA scene like over in England? Where like I've been at events where you're backstage and there's a local guy and you experience it yourself in the gym where it's like I'm a local
mm,
guy, but UFC guy, Bellator guy, PFL guy.
mm,
Like what's
mm.
it like?
Oh, it's massive at the moment. It is massive. That's I think one of the things that I realized when coming over here was that. See, correct me if I'm wrong. I still feel like whenever I'm in Australia, I feel like there aren't too many MMA gyms. I feel like there's a lot of there were a few obviously like there are definitely a few MMA gyms, but I think obviously it's changing now and it's developing more. But I think in Australia it's a bit more still. A lot of gyms that do the individual sports. So whether it be BJJ, even wrestling, kickboxing, and then they have the other disciplines in there, but not too many mix them. there are gyms coming through that do that, but I feel like in the UK that obviously there's a lot more people. There's about three times the amount of people, but they're just like, in Liverpool, for example, it seemed like there were about 10 MMA gyms that were a decent level. And then you've got shows happening all the time, every weekend, multiple shows a weekend with loads of amateur fighters, and there's loads of pro guys, which obviously it makes sense because uh there's more people. But I think there is a bit more of a fighting culture here anyway. Like you see that with boxing, and I think that's a lot of the people that would have done boxing back in the day are now doing MMA. So it is massive. Then obviously, Leon's not the champion anymore, but you've got big Tom Aspinall as well, who's doing well. And I think it's just growing and growing and growing. And I think the other advantage of it is that you just have Europe just so easy to access. So for fights, people get people over from Europe. America's not too far away as well. The problem for Australia is that you either fight in Australia or you've got to do a massive amount of travel to get to another part of the world to compete. So I think just Australia's always been just the location of Australia just makes it so much more difficult for people to develop and do things. But I think the UK is just like blessed with its location, if that makes sense.
As you mentioned, they're like gyms that kind of cater to everything, that train
Yeah,
MMA. They're not just like we're a kickboxing gym that we run a
yeah,
BJJ class. Um,
yeah.
do you get those do you ever travel and cross train at any other gyms, or are you mainly just out of TFT?
I just train at TFT, and then I will get people in, like we'll get people in for sparring, or we'll travel for sparring and stuff, because that's always good, where you're going to a different gym to spar, because it just feels like that fight feeling. Um and although I've got really good sparring partners here, they're still your mate, so you don't just feel as nervous sparring them. Do you know what I mean? It's just it's fun. Whereas, like the other week I traveled up to Scotland to spar, and they had three guys for me, just fresh man round me, and it's like I know these three guys are going to come in here and try and kill me, so I've got to be sharp here. And yeah, so but for me, I feel I just train at TFT because I just feel like Fisher does such a good job of everything we do is for MMA. It's MMA striking, MMA wrestling, MMA grappling. So I just feel, you know, sometimes when I've been training BJJ, for example, there's a lot of these things that I'm not going to use in a fight at the moment. So why waste my time doing that? Even, if you go and train boxing, there's a lot of things that I'm not going to do. I'm not going to use for my MMA. Yeah, they can help develop your skills, but I'm sort of at that point in my career where I need to focus on what I need, the skills that I truly need. So I just have that much faith in Fisher that I just train there. Just let him just guide me through my career.
As I mentioned earlier, you shared a post, I think it was about 2 or 3 days ago, about kind of like a look back at about like,
Mm,
it's been 3 years since you've moved over. Um,
yeah,
when you look at the man who arrived in England and you look at the man now, what are the differences that you see, both as a person and then as a fighter?
that's a good question. Yeah, I think that was one of the things when I was looking back. It's just I think that it's stepping out of that comfort zone. I was in Australia, and I was undefeated. I was rising. I felt like I was you know one of the top strikers in the country. I had a good gym set up, I had a good team, but I just always, I don't know. And I guess if COVID hadn't happened, I probably would have stayed there, and I probably would. I don't know. Maybe I would never have taken that step into MMA. I would have just stayed within my comfort zone, which was kickboxing. But I think it's just stepping out of that comfort zone just absolutely just changed everything really. And obviously, I've taken losses over here as well, which I didn't in Australia as well, and that 100% changes you, because um, you know it's easy to keep going when you're winning, but when when you've taken a loss and you can come back from it and keep on, keep on improving and get back and keep fighting and keep developing your skills and keep your mindset strong. It just forges you into a different person. I think as cliched as that sounds. And obviously being away from family, being away from my parents, being away from, I've got friends here and I've got family here now, but my childhood friends, it's that's all challenging in itself. But as I said in that post, I came over here to be the best fighter in the world, and that's all I'm settling for. So it's being over here with absolutely no distractions and just going for it. Every day is just going for it, just focused on that.
How does the family get it? Like, how are they?
Yeah, they definitely didn't get it at first. I was no one in my family, none of my friends, no one in my family do anything like this at home, and they definitely didn't understand it at first. But they couldn't be more supportive now. My mum's actually visiting over from Australia at the moment, and she's going to be at the fight, and she's never come to a fight before, so she's quite nervous. But yeah, they couldn't be more supportive now. But it was a challenge at first, but I just had to sort of ignore what they were saying and just do it.
How do you feel about your mother coming over?
Yeah, yeah. It's just I'm excited. Earlier in my career, I probably would have been nervous, but I think the worst. I've been through the worst of what can happen. When I fought for in America, it was in Boston for the world title. I was I was so I was still undefeated at the time, and I'd taken the fight on like 2 weeks' notice, and we'd just flown over on a couple of days, and I was schooling the guy, and his name's Steve Walker, and he was like 15-0, all knockouts, like brutal finisher. But I was absolutely schooling him, and I remember after the first round, I was just thinking, oh, I'm so much better than this guy. This is easy. I'm gonna smash him. And then second round started. It was going the same way. I was lighting him up, probably building more of a lead. And then I just wake up out the back 20 minutes later, and my mate Jack Grant, one of my good friends over here, who's in PFL Europe at the moment, just had a massive win. Um, he's he's just sat next to me, and I'm like looking at it, and I'm going, I recognize him. And then there are people around me, and everyone's speaking in American accents, and I'm just going like, where am I? Like I've got no idea where I am. And I slowly start like I asked Jack, I'm like, oh, what happened, bro? And he's like, oh, you got knocked out. And I was like, and then I slowly started realizing where I was, and it came back to me. And Jack said that obviously I'd been awake for like 10 minutes before then, but I'd asked him that about 8 times. What happened, bro? And you know, then and then they took me to the hospital just for a checkup. Everything was fine. And obviously I've been caught in the fight, and I got knocked out, like like put to sleep basically. And then I remember like leaving the hospital and with Jack, and I remember just thinking like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Like that's literally, and it was like this feeling of relief where that was literally the worst thing that could possibly happen in a fight. And it like obviously it's not great, but it's like, oh well, if like there's nothing to be scared of, because it's just, it's like I don't know, it alleviated this pressure off me where I just felt, oh well, you know this is as bad as it gets, but I handled that fine, and it's not going to stop me. I'm still going to keep on pushing, and I'm going to get to where I want to go. So now I just feel like with fights, it just feels like, I don't know, it feels different now. I feel that alleviation of pressure. I can just go in there, and I'm not worrying about bad things that can happen. It's just I'm just going to go in there and just accept what happens. And then obviously with back to the question with my mum being there, it's sort of for me, it's like, well, I know it's going to be fine, so she'll be fine. She might be stressed, but she'll be fine.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you used the word relief. Because I was going to bring this up and kind of ask about that feeling. Because over here, the other day I spoke to a local guy who's coming off his first loss. He was a
Mm,
local champion. He's coming off his first loss. He got stopped, and I asked him about that, and he kind of described that as well, about like
mm,
you put so much pressure on being undefeated
Mm,
and then you lose. But he's like, well, I got up the next day and it was my birthday and my girlfriend was still there and my family was still there.
yeah.
Was that you were talking about the relief of almost knowing that like it'll all work out, you'll be safe physically. But
Mm,
is there any relief of like the world's not going to end. My friends are still going to be there. Everyone's still going to be there for me,
mm.
even when you go through a loss.
Yeah, definitely. And it's that, it's that cliched saying of you see who's truly there for you as well. Because obviously over, and it's not like I'm not trying to say that I was, had this massive following but or was famous or anything like that, anywhere remotely near that. But obviously over a course of a career where you're getting good wins and you're undefeated, you build up a following and you build up support from people. And then you quickly see who the genuine support is from and who the fair weather support is from, the people that are only there when the sun's shining. And that's, I don't know, that's more grounding. You just become more grounded because of that. You're not it becomes more real. It's hard to describe it, but it's just that you see what's really real and you see what the fake is, and you have as much better understanding of what's real and what's fake. So going forward, it's just, and then obviously then you start winning again, and then you know those people start coming back and supporting you again. But it's like, oh well, where were you when I was, knocked out, or where were you when I lost this fight, or but you're here now when and obviously you don't begrudge those people, but it's just letting you can just see it. You have a clearer vision on those things.
I think about that often.
Mm,
I wonder, yeah, what's that? Because I can identify it. I can see people being fake, and they're not
mm.
being fake to me. They're being fake to fighters that I know, but I can still see it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've always wondered what
Sometimes
it's
it's easy.
like.
Sometimes it's easier from the outside to see it as well, because it feels good when people are supporting you and everyone's going, "Oh, you're amazing. You're this. You're that. Oh, yeah." And then suddenly you take it's you take a loss and you go and people sort of like write you off. But it's it's just part and parcel with the game, I think, with this sport in particular.
Talking about support, and this is something you touched on a little bit earlier. But in the last fight, there is that photo of you afterwards with your team, and everyone's got the cork hats on.
Mm.
Uh, did they get it? Did they understand what you're going for, or were you like, wear this hat? And they were like, why?
Yeah, no, they got it. They got yeah. The funny thing is, I feel people in the northeast, they're not sort of, they don't put themselves out there in those sort of ways. So for me, it was quite funny, making all of them wear the hat as well, because I think like Fisher walked out with it. Fisher had the hat on, so I didn't tell anyone that we were doing the hats other than my corner. And then when we walked out, there were a few teammates that were right on the walkout bit, and they saw Fisher with it and just couldn't stop laughing. He just like took it off quickly, like just it was just. I think that's the good thing about the gym. It's really good natured. Everyone just like whines. No one, like, you can't have an ego in that gym. Everyone just gets absolutely just just roasted all the time. It's so there's a lot of, and it's even out the back before the fights, we're all just having a laugh and having a joke, and then obviously we work hard, but it's enjoyable as well. But yeah, they got it. I think they know what the little things you got to do as well to get a bit of attention on yourself. And it's good hearted stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with it, I think, in their eyes.
I reckon that's got to make the cultural shock of going over there easier. Like if an American came over, they might be a little bit more shocked. But I
Yeah,
feel
yeah,
like we get the crack, as they call it. I think that's more
yeah.
of an Irish term, but we get the crack, you know?
No, they say crack up here as well. They say what's the
Yeah.
crack? Yeah,
Yeah, you get the crack.
yeah, yeah. Everybody, oh, it's really similar to Australia in that way. There's I don't know if you know him. He trains at ATT. He's called Finn Radigan. He had a bit of a kickboxing career, and he's transitioned to MMA. But I didn't realize that he had family in the area, and then he just turned up at the gym one day at TFT when he was visiting, and he just fit straight in. Just that like that, just that Aussie, the Aussie banter just fits in well with the UK, especially the Northeast, I'd say as well.
Did you know him much?
I we'd fought on a couple of kickboxing shows, I think, back in the day together. And I didn't know him to speak to, but I definitely had seen him around and knew of him. So it was cool that I just looked at him and just thought, when you see someone that you recognize, but it's completely out of place, and I was trying to place him, and then it clicked.
I was gonna say it must feel like seeing a ghost almost. You're like, whoa, what are you
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
here?
Especially you just don't expect it. I mean, like I said, if it was in London or somewhere, it'd be a bit more. You'd expect it a bit more, but not up here.
Yeah. Talking about that the kickboxing career, what benefits do you feel you coming into MMA from an extensive kickboxing career give you compared to someone who hasn't had that experience?
Um, I think I fought on a few bigger shows, especially over here. The shows that I fought on were against, since I made the move here, they were against high level opposition, and they were on. I fought in Italy for a world title, which I also lost, but I still think I won that decision. But you're never winning a decision in Italy. That's a known thing. But the guy that I fought there was really famous. He was Italy seemed to just like develop these kickboxers, and they just become really famous, and they do a great way of marketing him. So there were so many eyes on that fight, to the point of, after the fight in Rome the next day, I was walking around and I was getting stopped by people coming up for photos and like shaking my hand and stuff like that. So that had a lot of eyes on it. It was on DAZN, and it was a big card. So I've had that experience where I fought world class level guys on massive shows with a lot of eyes. So I don't feel like any of these things phase me, and I always have that in my head that I want to get this kickboxing experience so that when I go into MMA, I feel comfortable in these moments. And then obviously also I just feel like my striking is just so much sharper than these guys, and I can just one shot them. It's just like I don't feel like I'm wasting strikes. I'm just finding the target, and it's obviously just from getting my eye in from just having so many fights. It's yeah, I just feel like I can just find that target, and it's just allowing me to just finish them quickly.
I feel like this is just from my perspective. I feel like working the body in MMA is severely underrated and underused. You're a gentleman who has had two stoppages at this point by body damage, if not three. Is it two?
It's three.
Three. Okay, I
Yeah,
wasn't sure about the middle one. I knew the most
yeah,
recent, and I
yeah,
knew the
yeah,
first one.
yeah.
Do you feel that maybe working the body in MMA is underrated?
I think it's underrated in any combat sport, really. I think even in kickboxing, you just feel so many people just headhunt, or they go for the legs. But I think I just feel the reason I think I developed the body shot is because I try not to go, especially with kicks, I try not to go hard to the head in sparring, but I'll definitely try and drop people to the body. So I feel like I've just got loads of reps of doing that. Um, and I think it is just something that's exposed, when if someone's headhunting, especially for me, they're reaching up, especially if they're throwing, if they're, in kickboxing. So the main thing that would happen is that someone would throw a massive overhand at me as they're trying to close the distance, and I would knee them to the body, and it would do damage. But um, yeah, I think it's just one of those things where, yeah, it's just there, and it just people don't defend it as well. And if you can find the target, it's almost easier to finish someone with a body shot than it is to the head as well.
When talking about like the difference between striking to the head or to the body, when you crack someone in the head and they go down, like but
Mm,
when you hit to the body, there are times where it takes a moment, and I feel like
mm,
in one of the stoppages in MMA, you had that where you hit someone in the body
mm,
and you were like, yeah, I know he's done.
mm,
How do
mm.
you know that? Like, is it something you feel in the moment? Do you read something on the opponent?
Yeah, I think you definitely feel the shot and you go, oh, that was a good one. And then you just sort of wait. You just look at them for a second. So I often just wait and then just see. Like in my MMA debut, I kicked him in the liver and he just sort of shot straight down. And I was a bit surprised by that one. I was like, oh. And then I did the worst ground and pound ever. But because I wasn't used to it. And then in the other two, it was sort of, oh, I hit him to the body. And then I knew it was a good shot and I just waited for a second. And then it's like giving them the chance to go down. Because what I find it happens more in MMA as well. What happens when someone hurts someone is that they just end up going crazy. And sometimes they give that person a chance to wrestle, or they give that person a chance to, um, you know, land something of their own, or recover their senses a bit. But I think it's, a ref's pretty willing to jump in if that person's like turns away a little bit and shows that they're hurt, and you just walk off. The ref will normally just jump in and wave it off. So it's just easier to walk. Like I just give it a second and then just see, like let it cook, and then if I think they're done, I'll just walk off.
You graduated from the Mark Hunt School of Striking.
Yeah, that's it. I've trained with Mark, and he's the master of it. But I'm just doing the body shot walk off KO.
Yeah. You're like, I have decided he is done.
Yeah, he's done. Ref, jump in now.
Save him.
Mm.
What was it like training with Mark? What is there like? When did you cross paths with him?
So that was during COVID, when I was helping Ty train for the Struve fight, and Mark was training, and he was preparing for I think they were thinking that he was going to fight Paul Gallen, but that was so he was just training. But I only body shot. Well, funny enough, I only body shot sparred with him boxing, and honestly, I've never been hit by anything like it to the body. It literally felt like I got stabbed. Like it was strange, and he didn't put it. I'm sure he wasn't putting it in, but like Ty will tell you himself, like Ty hits hard, and he feels like he's heavy handed, but Mark just feels like he's got something like illegal in his glove. Like it's ridiculous. I'm normally pretty good to the body. Like I've been hit by body shots by Ty, and it definitely hurts. But when Mark hit me, it was just literally just like crippling. It was strange. But yeah, he's like the most humble guy you've ever met. It's like he doesn't know he's Mark Hunt. He's just so humble, super humble.
And then he stabs you in the rib.
And then he kills you. He doesn't let when he's training, he doesn't let off.
This is something you kind of talked about earlier, but I think it was more in regards to the literal training of MMA. You talked about coming in from a kickboxing background, you're starting over.
Mm.
Uh, so not considering the training, but for the career, do you think do you think you can throw a little bit more weight around with your career because you've had 17 pro kickboxing fights? Do you think it can push you a little bit further quicker?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, and then obviously you got to get the results in MMA. So you got to, if you had, that amount of fights, and then you're getting into MMA and you're just terrible. Like it's not gonna help you. But I think when you're finishing, when getting these like vicious finishes and doing damage to people, and then you combine that with, oh, he's had 17 kickboxing fights. That helps have a narrative where you can then push it on a little bit further. Like I don't think it'll be too long until I'm knocking on the UFC's door. I think a couple of good wins, and yeah, I'll be there. So I think it definitely helps. But like I said, you got to get the results, because if you're 0-7 but you've had 17 kickboxing fights, it's not going to help you.
Yeah, they don't care.
No.
Talking about, what is in the horizon. Before we talk about this fight, we'll talk about that. Is there at all like a game plan? Is there like this fight title contender?
Um. So I'm not super concerned about winning the Cage Warriors belt. For me, it's just I want to get to the UFC. So I see that happening next year, whether that be through the Contender Series, or obviously it happens less these days. We're getting signed straight away. So I think so my plan for this year and what Cage Warriors wants for this year as well is that I have this fight and then I fight in Newcastle in November again. So they wanted me to just fight in Newcastle, but I asked for one more before then because I want to get the fights in. So yeah, I think obviously my goal is to win both of these fights with good finishes, and then yeah, just see what's up for next year. And I think it won't be long until I'm there.
Talking about Cage Warriors, because I've got an idea of how the Aussie scene is and the big promotions over here. But what is it like working with and fighting for Cage Warriors? Because it seems huge.
Yeah, it's massive. It feels, when you're at a show, it feels like a mini UFC. And it's one of those things where, when Cage Warriors announced that they were coming back to Newcastle, there was genuine excitement in the area. And then when you go to an event, it's like how what a UFC event's like that. People are generally buzzing and getting into the fights, and there's obviously the production level is massive. When you're fighting for them, it's very professional. Everything's done really professionally. And I think it's just what it's, other than it's in terms of pathways to the UFC, or if you want to call it a feeder show to the UFC, it's definitely the biggest feeder show to the UFC in the world. So outside the contender series, but that's really the UFC, isn't it? But yeah, it is massive. And I've said it to people after that last fight I had that he's definitely not the biggest, like he's not the best person that I've fought and not my most impressive win, but just the fact that it was on Cage Warriors just gets you so much more respect and more hype about it, just being on that show. So yeah, it's definitely a great platform.
Not to talk too much business, but as you said there, like this fight, and then they want you again in November. Is it like one fight deals? Do they sign you to like three?
Yeah, so there's all different ways of doing it. I'm on a 2 fight deal basically, but there's for this one and then November. But yeah, there's all different. I mean, some people are on 5 fight deals, some people are on 1 fight deals. It's all they that's probably that's probably where they differ to the UFC, but obviously because it's smaller, they need to be able to get people in, and so they obviously offer 1 fight deals as well.
Talking about this upcoming fight, you are fighting Brandon Guest. What are your thoughts on him as a fighter?
Yeah, I mean he's had a good amateur career. I feel like so this is his pro debut. So I'm a bit offended that he thinks he can make a pro debut against me. I was matched with him for the Newcastle card at the start of the year, but he pulled out, and that hence why I got the big Italian replacement. But yeah, I mean he's fairly well rounded. I think he was 7-2 as an amateur, but I just feel like his like the strength of schedule wasn't there. He's not really it's a big step up for him this fight. Um, he's coming off a knockout loss as well in his last fight, which was about 18 months ago. So I feel like it's a tall order, literally and figuratively, for him to face me in a pro debut. And but yeah, I think I've respect for him for taking it. I think it's not going to be an easy fight because he's definitely got skills, but I can see myself breaking him.
How much stock do you put into someone's amateur career?
It just depends, doesn't it? Because it's, look, I've seen people with amateur careers where they're 4-6, but their 6 losses were against really top opposition, and then they come into the pro scene and they do really well. And because they've tested themselves and they've developed their skills, I've seen other people with amateur careers where they have really good amateur careers. They haven't really fought anyone. Like so on the outside, aesthetically, it looks like a great amateur career, but they've not fought anyone. They've not really challenged themselves. And they've tried to sort of pad their record in a way. And then they get to the pro scene and they get found out pretty quickly. So it just really, that's why I like to actually you can hear 7-2 amateur, but then you look at the records of the people he's beat, and it's not as impressive as it sounds.
You mentioned being slightly offended that he thinks he can make his pro debut against you.
Mm.
Uh, is this a fight that did he call for or something, or is it just been they've matched you up with him?
Yeah, I mean, so we got matched up for the for May, and then I mean, I did say in post fight interviews after that fight, I said, oh well, I was matched with Branden, guess so. If he wants, I wanted to fight on the next Manchester card because that was a couple of days before the UFC card in Manchester. So I thought, oh well, if UFC might be there looking at people, but I didn't get on that card, and then they booked it for September. So I mean, I called for it, and then they offered it, and then we accepted it in September. So I mean, you can obviously turn people down, but I think people just don't want to turn people down on Cage Warriors. It's like in the UFC, you probably when you're first getting in there, you wouldn't turn people down. You just got to take the fight. So I don't know. Uh, we'll see how confident he is. I think he'll definitely be a bit panicky at the start, and I think the first round will be difficult because he'll be full of adrenaline. But yeah,
So far, with your victories, you haven't made it out of the first round.
Mm.
Is that a trend you're predicting will continue?
Yeah, I think so. I think first round, or I think early second rounds. I just feel like he'll break, but I'm ready. I'm obviously ready for three. I'm ready to push a pace for three, but I just feel like he'll break. So the earlier the better. Then you're fresh, and I can start preparing for November.
You mentioned earlier going over to Scotland for train or bringing guys from Scotland in. Oh, Scotland. Yeah, Scotland. You did say that.
Yeah, yeah, Scotland. Yeah,
Was you going over?
yeah. We went up to Glasgow to a gym up there.
You mentioned those guys would, go hard on you. Of course they would. They're from Scotland. They were probably going to use some weapons as well. Scotland has the reputation of being a very hard place.
Yeah,
Have you ever been before? Well, you have. How do you find Scotland?
yeah. No, it's similar to the northeast. Really, is I mean, we're really close to the border of Scotland, so I feel the people are quite similar. I've been to Edinburgh a few times, which is probably the fanciest part of Scotland. But Glasgow's I've been there as well. I've got my auntie's from Glasgow, so I've got a bit of family there as well. But no, I think it's really similar to the northeast, to be honest. Obviously, a beautiful countryside as well. So I'm looking forward to. I always think that the from what I've seen for Cage Warriors, the Newcastle and the Glasgow crowds I think the Dublin crowd as well, but the Newcastle and Glasgow crowds are the best crowds, and it's in quite a big arena as well. And there aren't too many tickets left, so I think it's going to be a really good atmosphere.
Bit of a raucous crowd.
Yeah, oh, definitely, definitely.
My favorite comparison I've heard between Glasgow and Edinburgh, I've never been, but was if you see someone in Edinburgh with a golf club, they're probably going to go play a game of golf.
That's probably fair. Yeah, the first time I went to Glasgow, there was we were just walking around the city, and just all the bins were just like overflowing, and there was probably like a 3 meter radius around each bin of just rubbish. And we were just thinking, like, surely, like, this is really rough here. But then it did turn out that there was a bin man strike, so that explained that. But it definitely seems a bit rougher than Edinburgh. But Edinburgh's like it's quite fancy, a bit touristy and fancy. Whereas I feel like Glasgow's the real Scotland.
I was about to say, true Scotland. You want to get the Scottish
Yeah,
experience, you go to
that's
Glasgow.
it. Yeah, yeah. You wouldn't have Cage Warriors Edinburgh. It's got to be Cage Warriors Glasgow.
No, they'd look down on that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Hmm.
As we've established, it is fight week. We are not too far out. Are you over there now? Are you in Glasgow at the moment?
No, I'm still in the northeast. So I go up on Thursday, so tomorrow.
I'm assuming, obviously, you have to get there to do what you have to do for Cage Warriors. But as you said, you're right next to it. I'm assuming it's not too much of a difference in terms of environment.
No, no, yeah, it's the same really.
No, no, what you call it? Like when you get used to an atmosphere.
Acclamation.
Yeah, no acclamation.
No, 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 no. Nothing.
People,
Nothing
pe-
like.
people throwing bottles at you while you train.
It.
I
You're
say
gonna get.
this. I say that because I love Scotland and I love Glasgow. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
it's loving. I'm giving them the
yeah,
crack.
yeah, yeah. That's it. That's it. It's all the crack.
But we talked about it earlier. You are in the process of the fun weight cut. What does the rest of the week look like for yourself?
Yeah, so a little bit of training tonight, just like shorter, just moving around, and then tomorrow get a haircut, drive up to Glasgow. I think do check in at the hotel, check your weight. Might have to do a little bit of like media stuff, like photos and things like that, and then just do the weight cut. If I hopefully I don't need to cut anything in the nighttime, I might just have to do it in the just a little bit in the morning, and then yeah, weigh-ins at 10 a.m. and then just fill myself up, and then I think I'll be fairly early on the card on Saturday, so um, I imagine I'll be fourth or fifth fight or something like that. So get the job done nice and early, and then enjoy the rest of the show.
Are you a guy who, yeah, you'll hang out and check out the rest of the show?
Yeah, yeah, because it's just like it's a good yeah. So I know a few people fighting on it, so they've got the $50,000 prize fighter tournament as well. So that's interesting because obviously when there's that sort of money on the line at this stage of people's careers, they really go for it. So, and I think just taking the atmosphere as well, just enjoy the atmosphere of the Glasgow crowd.
You mentioned getting a haircut. Is there anything specific you're going to do with it?
Not anything different, but just the mullet. Just keep the mullet going.
You're carrying home with you.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. That's it.
Talking about that, you've got friends and family here. You've got friends and family in England. You walk out with the cork hat, land down under. How do you stay connected to home, both literally with the people that you know here and like you a big Vegemite fan? I don't know.
Yeah, I think I like Vegemite. Vegemite's nice. They have Marmite over here, which is fairly similar. But it's yeah, I think just obviously just staying in contact with friends and because my parents and my granddad's in Australia, so it's easy. It's Australia just feels like home to me. But I've always felt like I was from both anyway. Even when I was in Australia, I felt like I was English as well. So I feel like it feels quite easy for me to stay connected. And then yeah, I think it's just getting that now. It's just getting that support from the Australian crowd for my MMA career as well, and then hopefully I can, have the support from both sets of fans.
Well, I'm definitely sending the love from home and home
Yeah,
is
yeah,
sending their support. Uh,
appreciate it.
very, very strange last question, but it popped into my head
Yeah,
because we were talking about haircuts.
yeah, yeah.
Chuck Liddell had the iconic mohawk.
Mm.
He's a gentleman whose name was Charles. Uh,
Oh
I
yeah,
I can't shorten my name. Joel's a bit too short to get a nickname.
yeah.
Why stick with Charles and not go for the Charlie or the Chuck option?
So it's funny because it's obviously my birth name is Charles, but then when I was younger, everyone called me Charlie. So then, I mean, a lot of people, and then I sort of got to a certain age where I started going by Charles for some reason. I just thought, oh, this sounds more grown up now. Um, I don't know. I feel like it. I don't know. I just felt like Charles suited me. For it's just I've actually yeah. So I formalized mine. I had the nickname and I formalized it as I got older. But then you can often tell, you know, at what stage of my life people know me from, whether they call me Charlie or Charles, which is interesting. So yeah,
Is it like the people who met you as Charlie can call you Charlie, but anyone who met you as Charles can't call you Charlie?
they have to keep it formal and they have to
Yeah,
wear a suit and tie when referring to me.
exactly. You can't use that name. You don't know me like that.
Yeah.
Charles, I thank you so much for the time you fight on Cage Warriors 176. For over here back at home, the prelims start at 3 a.m. on Sunday. So people have to stay up to watch you, but that's fine.
Yeah. Stay up or get up.
They'll do it. They'll do it. There is
Yeah.
there's a local. I'm from Melbourne. There's a local show in Melbourne, uh, the Saturday. So I'll go to
Okay.
that and then I'll stay up. And while I'm
Oh,
doing whatever, I'll have you on the monitor.
oh, nice, nice. Appreciate it.
Of
Appreciate it.
course. I'm glad your mother is over there and you're getting a chance to fight in front of her. I thank you so much for the time. Best of luck in the fight and thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it, mate. Cheers.